In 2014, Bioware released the highly anticipated third game to one of their main franchises, Dragon Age. The reviews for Dragon Age Inquisition were all over the place, but thankfully the general consensus was that this third game in the Dragon Age series did more things right than it did wrong, and improved on many things that Dragon Age 2 lacked. But today, over 7 years later after release, I'm asking the question, does it still hold up and is it worth playing in 2022? How's it going, by the way? Mr. Holton here, and before we continue, remember to subscribe to the channel, and if you want to support me in my content creation endeavor, you could always become a member. Alright, so without further ado, let's talk some Dragon Age. So starting from the beginning, the character creation in Dragon Age Inquisition is actually one of the better ones if you compare it to the standard RPG customization. The design of the UI is very casual and easy to use, and instead of deciding on every aspect being a set size, you can basically shape your character's face like mold, piece by piece. Thankfully, your custom character can actually turn out somewhat attractive, which is something that was pretty difficult in Bioware's later game, Mass Effect Andromeda. Now, just like I did when Inquisition released back in 2014, I decided to design my mage here in the likeness of Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones, which I was surprised that I managed to do. Moving on from the character creation, the start of the game is pretty intriguing, as our hero, the so-called Herald of Andraste, or the Inquisitor, suffers from memory loss and is suspected of being the culprit behind the gigantic Fade Rift that's causing havoc to the surroundings.
Explain this. I can't.
This is also where we meet Cassandra and a returning character, that being Leliana. Cassandra was a character that I fell for immediately, as she displays this very dominant and strict demeanor, but softens up later on and proves to be a reliable friend. Speaking of which, the party members in Dragon Age Inquisition are pretty well written, and they all vary immensely with regards to personality. Varric is also another returning character from Dragon Age 2, and he's just as easygoing as usual.
Can I ask you something, Varric?
You want to talk about me? I'm flattered. Also inclined toward extravagant lies.
Overall, while Varric is no Garrus and Leliana isn't Liara, I'm pretty satisfied with the party members. While not everyone are memorable, there are some that stick out. Iron Bull especially. He's my go-to two-handed tank, and his personality is pretty awesome.
See the way everything lit up when it tried to fry us. Now that is a fight.
The cool thing is that he's voice acted by Freddie Prinze Jr., who played James Vega in Mass Effect 3, so he's instantly recognizable for anyone who played it. Speaking of party members, how are the romance options in Dragon Age Inquisition? Well, I think they're pretty alright. Now, of course, I haven't been able to romance everyone yet, so I don't know how all of them play out, but one thing that I wish had been better would be, you know, the sexy time scenes.
Yeah, boy.
So far, there hasn't been any form of nudity, and for a game that draws a lot of inspiration from Game of Thrones, because you literally get a throne after the intro part of the game, it's odd that the game feels somewhat desexualized. This is kind of a bummer, since if we just compare it to Mass Effect, all 3 Mass Effect games had some incredible romance scenes where even Fox News had to talk about it once.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff. I was looking at it a little bit this afternoon. It's a new role-playing video game that is leaving nothing to the imagination. Mass Effect is what it's called.
But hey, I haven't seen all the romance scenes, so maybe there are others that are better. Now let's just talk a little bit about the graphics. First of all, I have to mention that Dragon Age Inquisition proves that Bioware can actually make a good game even if they're using the Frostbite engine. The environments in this game can look extremely beautiful sometimes, and considering it's close to having been made just short of 10 years ago, it goes to show that Frostbite can produce some amazing graphics. We still have the issue of facial animations sometimes looking strange. But comparing this game to the 2 previous titles, you can't really tell a difference when it comes to the look of the game. There are moments when someone talks and their face just seems expressionless, but this is often remedied by someone smiling or making a pouty face later on. It is, however, apparent that corners were cut here and there, and while the animation issues never fall completely into the Mass Effect Andromeda zone, It's pretty jarring when several characters are talking and the only thing moving are their mouths. This obviously tends to happen with the Inquisitor herself, and while most Bioware games tend to have some degree of this with their main characters, it's more noticeable here. Now this is just nitpicking of course, and this doesn't really pull you out of the game too much. Alright, so what about the gameplay and the world? Well, it's definitely not Mass Effect, which I'm very used to. Dragon Age has always been the more slow-paced strategic game, where you pause the game to select abilities to use and jump between characters while fighting. Now thankfully you don't have to do that if you're more of a real-time action type of person, just like Mass Effect. You can just spam your abilities to your heart's content. And the abilities in Dragon Age Inquisition doesn't seem very special at first, but the longer you play and the more skills you open up, it can get pretty crazy with all the combos you can pull off with the right selection of team members. Oh, and if you're to remember one thing from this video, use combos to your advantage, like freezing enemies and then blowing them up with a fire spell. This can clear out entire groups of enemies in a short time if you're smart. One thing that I regretted pretty early on was to play as a mage because of how squishy they are, but after learning that I could switch over to Sarah with her dual daggers or to Iron Bull and just start Hulk smashing, it felt like such a breath of fresh air. Thank God for the possibility of switching between teammates. And the mage class does get pretty strong later on, and they're probably the most important class when it comes to keeping the team alive because of the barrier ability. Now switching between party members is something that I wish was implemented into Mass Effect at some point, because it really helps out with the repetitive nature of only playing one class. Alright, so let's get into crafting. This is one of those mechanics that I usually leave alone because I just want to experience the story. And in Dragon Age Inquisition, you don't really have to craft anything at all because there is a lot of loot that can be found out there. But as I want to murder all the high dragons in this game, I need the best stats possible, and that's where the crafting system comes in. And well, it's pretty alright. I wish the crafting UI was a little more refined, but it does the job. The stuff you can craft though isn't really mind-blowing, and I do wish there were more appealing looking stuff in the game. Speaking of which, I have to complain about the light armor in this game. Now the heavy plate armors can look pretty cool, but the ones that mages get to use are pretty boring to be honest. I haven't found one piece of really good looking armor yet, and I think I'm a little more than halfway through the game at this point. Gimme my skimpy fantasy MMO swimsuit, goddammit. Am I right? Alright, so joking aside, I really do wish there were more appealing designs for armors, as most look pretty much the same. The casual outfits you unlock later in the game are pretty nice, but it's a bummer that you can't change the color combination on them. Alright, so let's move on to the pacing of the game. Now, while I at first felt that the beginning of the game was a little slow, I soon remembered the reason to why I felt this, and that is the hinterlands. This is the first area that you can explore to your heart's content after finishing the intro to the game. And while I do enjoy running around exploring, it can sometimes bore you to death if you stay in the same area. And that's because the hinterlands is almost endless when it comes to stuff to do. For the first hours of the game, it's pretty easy to get stuck in this place, only to start thinking, is this map literally all there is? I gotta admit, my first time trying this out again a few days ago ended with me just quitting the game because I got so bored from running around in the hinterlands. So a word of advice to you if you want to pick up Dragon Age Inquisition: get out of the hinterlands as soon as possible. Because as soon as you get out of the hinterlands, the whole game opens up. You now get many different environments, that being rocky wet islands to dry deserts and other extremely beautiful places like the Emerald Graves. But let's boil all this down to one question. Is Dragon Age Inquisition worth playing in 2022? Well, yeah. Especially if you've finished up with Mass Effect Legendary Edition and you're looking for something else to sink your teeth into. Dragon Age Inquisition is thankfully a great game, and it blows my mind that there was such a difference in quality compared to Mass Effect Andromeda, since Andromeda was made in a Frostbite engine as well. But I guess a lot of it has to do with the writing as well. There are some frustrations here and there, like the fact that you have to go all the way around a hill to get to that one thing that you're trying to find. I mean, you have the ability to jump. How can I not just jump between these two rocks? And then of course there are signs of the animation being wonky sometimes. But overall, it's a pretty good time, and it's easy to get stuck playing for hours trying to get strong enough to hunt those damned high dragons. One tip though, if you want to buy Dragon Age Inquisition, then buy it on Origin. I know how most of you guys feel about EA, but the fact is that right now, the game sits at around $5 for the Game of the Year edition. If you decide to buy it on Steam, however, you'll have to pay $40 or euros for it. And well, yeah, you see what I'm saying here. It's also included if you have EA Play, so just go right ahead and download it if you have that. And I guess that's it. I hope you guys found this video useful, and if you want me to cover more Dragon Age stuff, then please nag me to do so. And as always, have a great day guys. Mr. Holton signing out.